Good evening, everyone.
Kabbalah, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay. Okay, so it looks like we're doing good dialogue.
But can we review the Shulchan Aruch one more time,
Yeah.
please? And you're given, no?
Yes, of course. So here we go. We'll do that again. So it says here, Tzarich she'eh b'mayim revi'it. As we said, right? You need to revi'it with the water, revi'it of water. V'hana mileh le'echad. That's talking about one person. But if you have two people, שבאו ליטול כאחד, coming to wash their hands together, האחרון אינו צריך. So the last one does not need to have a revi'it. Even if it's one after the other, even but on condition that the stream of water should not stop. Right, should not stop the stream of water. So it's a little bit complicated, to wash your hands this way. Not very recommended, But anyway, right? So how does that work? He says you had a revit of water, right, in the vessel, and one person stuck his hands out. And one guy's pouring the water on him. So now comes the second guy, right, and puts his hand under the first guy. סמוך ליד הראשון. וכילוח יורד על ידו. And then, right, the stream of water is going down on his hand. של ראשון, on the first guy. ולידו של השני, שלמטה ממנו. Also the second guy is getting it. שניהם טהורות, so they're both טהור. פי שפיחת שיעור הרביעית. Even though that now it's smaller than רביעית. כשהם מגיעים לידיו של השני, when it comes to the second guy. ידיו טהורות, so his hands are anyway, they're pure. מפני שהם באים בשיעורי הטהרה. Why is that? Because originally we had enough. So we're relying on the original measure. Okay. So then says ויש מתירים אפילו כשנוטלים זה על זה אחר זה. Some allow this even if you're washing one after the other. הואיל בשעה שהתחיל האחד, since when the first guy started, he told him to wash the hands from him. היה בהם רביעית, there was רביעית in the beginning. גם לשני זה עולים, so therefore it counts also for the second guy as well. מפני שבאו משיעור because it was from, right, the original part was good. The original measure was good. So he says, in this manner, you can wash from half a lug of water, right, which is like 6 ounces for 3-4 people, right? Gimel Daled. And if you have 12 ounces, so then you can, right, you can do several people. בני אדם, כל זמן שמספיקים המים לשפוך כל אחד על ידיו. As long as there's enough water to pour on everybody. Give a פעמים, 3 times. Okay. שיכולים להניח ד' וה' ידיהם, זה בצד זה. So they can put 4 or 5 people, right, their hands, one next to the other. או זה על גב זה, or one on top of the other. ויתור כאחד to wash together. בלבד שירפו ידיהם, as long as their hands are spaced apart, right, must be enough. בעניין שיגיעו המים לכל אחד. In a way that the water will reach everybody. Okay, so, all right, if you have any questions, let me know. So here he says 3 times, right? So let me see the Mishnah Berurah, what he says about that. Right, so he says in the Torah it says 2 times. Right? So, right, as I told you, the Ashkenazim, they do twice. So he says that over here, right? That the Torah says 2 times. Also, Mishnah Berurah seems to say like that's what you need. You need 2. So only if they're dirty, you have to wash 1 more time. Right, so you see from there, right, that the Mishnah Berurah is telling you, if your hands are not really dirty, you don't need 3 times, you need 2 times. Okay, whatever, it's all good. As I told you, right, the Sfardim, they do 3. So, okay, whatever. It's all good. So, okay, if you have any questions, let me know if you want to ask anything. It's not really something that we do, practically speaking, these kinds of things. I guess you can safely say, right, that we're talking here about people who have like a limited amount of water, so they can't, afford to use too much. So they do like, this kind of a savings kind of thing, in order to diminish the amount of water that they use. We already said, right, when you use a lot of water, they give you wealth, right? So it's good, use a lot of water, don't do right meager stuff like this, you know what I mean? That's not the way to do it. Only if there's no choice. This is the meager way. So I guess we'll go to Daled. Okay, so it says here in the Beit Yosef, כתוב באורחות חיים בשם הרשב"א. It says in this אורחות חיים, in the name of the Rashba, צריך שיהיה Mikunas b'makom echad. You have to have a revit of water in one place. Shim natal sheminit v'chazar v'natal mishminit yadav temeot. Right. So he says because if he used like half of that, and then another half, his hands are not pure. They're still impure. So you got to have the whole revit in one place, not half seas, right? Don't do half seas. Goes on, כתב רבנו שמשון, says this rabbi, המתניתין on the Mishnah, דמי רביעית נותנים לידיים לאחד, אף לשניים מחצי לוג לשלושה או על ארבע, לפום שיעורה דרביעית לשניים, היה די ברביעית ומחצה לשלושה, אלא כיוון שנרפשי גברי חשינן שלא ידקדקו יפה. So says this rabbi, רבנו שמשון, he says that really, if you had several people washing their hands, as we mentioned before, together. So he said you could really use a very a small amount. That would be good enough. What are we talking about? So he says for two people, he says you can use revit, as we said, and then 3 or 4, right? You could use half a lug, right, which is 6 ounces, twice as much. And so he says, but if you're using the ratio of 1 revit for 2 people, dai berevit umechza will be enough with a revit and a half for 3 people. So then why did they tell you to use more? Right? So he says the reason is because since there's several people, we're concerned though they're not going to be so they're not going to be so precise with the ratio of the water, right? So therefore they won't get enough water for each hand. על הפרק שכל אחד יצמצם המים מפני חברו, מי הוא? So אם עיקר רביעית מחצה, נטל לאחד מהם חצי רביעית. But it says, if you have a revit and a half, and one of them used half a revit, ודאי דיו לרביעית ונשאר של 2 אחרים. So you can use the revit which is left over for 2 more people. So that will give you 3 people for a revit and a half, right? Which is a big savings, right? You saved some water there, right? You did some heavy duty savings there. What does that mean? Instead of using 2 revit, you used 1.5. Oh, my God. What a deal.
Kavod Harav, can you repeat that one more time, please?
So he's telling you like this, right? That we already said, right? The ratio is like this. 2 people can do with revit. Okay? So that means if you have 3, you need a revit and a half, according to that ratio, right? But he says we try to use 2, that's what we say, right? Because we're concerned that they won't get enough. They won't be so precise. So then he says, but if they happen to have, a revit and a half, right? Which is 4.5 ounces. And one guy used the half revit, and there's 1 revit left over. Now you can have 2 people, right? So in other words, you could do 3 people with a revit and a half like that. Okay. All right. It's not really something that we would do, as I said, right? Not really. We don't do this kind of stuff. This is for people who don't have running water in the house. You know what I mean? That's what we're talking about. So they need to do a lot of savings. Okay, anyway, so it goes on. אפילו בתחילה סגי לשניים ברביעית, כל שכן אחד דעתו דמשאלת טהרה, וכי לא מהנה אחד, מילה כשלא נשאר השניים אחרונים ברביעית, לכן הוא דקאמר מחצי הלוג לשלושה ולארבעה דמשמע ולא לחמישה, שהרי לא ניתנו חכמים שיעור, אלא למים שבכלי, וכי איכה שיעור בו, לא חשו חכמים כמה יגיע לכל אחד, רק שיטול עד הפרק, והם מפרשינן כולם מתניתין ונותנין בבת אחד. So let me just read over this again one more time. You can translate a little bit. I was just trying to figure out what he's saying. So one more time, I'll read it. It says like this, right? וכי לא מהנה אחה נמי מילה כשלא נשאר, הנה מילה כשלא נשאר שניים האחרונים רביעית. So when it doesn't work is that if you had, left over for two people, less than רביעית. וכן עד כאמר בחצי לוג לשלושה, and also that what you said, right, that you could use for חצי לוג can give you for 3 people or 4 people, the mashma below לחמישה, but not for 5. That's the implication. Why is that? שהרי לא נתנו חכמים שיעור, so it says the rabbis didn't really make a measure אלא למים שבכלי, only regarding water which is in a vessel. וכי איכה שיעור בו, and when you have enough water in there, לא חשו לחכמים כמה יגיע לכל אחד. So then the rabbis were not concerned how much right, is the portion to each one. רק שיטול עד הפרק, as long as he washes until the perek. Right? So the question is, right now, the $1 million question, what is the perek? Anybody know what that means?
Isn't that the wrist? No.
Oh, good. Okay, that's one definition. Until the wrist, right? In other words, the whole hand, until the wrist. So, but then you have another definition, which is that we're talking about until the end of the fingers. In other words, the whole finger. So that's also called perek. Why are they both called perek? These things. Because perek means, right, in Hebrew, means like a how do you say this? It's like where the limbs connect. That's called a perek.
The joint?
Right, exactly, joint. Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. It has to be until the joint. So the question is it the joint of the fingers or the joint of the hand? They're both called perek, right? I think we're gonna discuss this later on, because there's a machloket, right? How much do you have to wash? Until the end of the fingers or until the end of the hand? You ever notice that on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, we only wash, right, until the end of the fingers. We don't wash till the end of the hand. Why is that? So the answer is that since you're not allowed to bathe on Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av, so the rabbi said, do only the minimum required to cleanse your hand. So the minimum required is the ends of your finger. That's enough. Why is that? Because Tisha B'Av, Yom Kippur, we're not eating, right? Hopefully we're not eating, right? Unless a person is sick, right? Whatever. If he's ill, he's old, whatever, he's allowed to eat. He's okay. But we're talking about a regular person, so right, who's fasting. So the point is, right, that we're not washing for a meal. We're washing to remove the evil spirit in the morning, right? When we wake up in the morning, or if we went to the bathroom, right, to use the bathroom, we're washing our hands when we come out. So there, the rabbis told you, listen, you don't really need to wash your whole hand. So there's because you can remove the ruach ra just by going until the end of the finger, until the joint of the finger. So That's the whole point, right? So, but when it comes to washing for a meal, right? There's a machloket. Some say you got to wash till right the joint of the finger, and some say no until the wrist, as we said, right? But we're gonna get into that. So what's halakha, by the way? How do we paskin? From what I remember, we say lechatchila, try to do like until the whole hand. But b'diavad, if he wasn't able to for some reason, and he did just, the fingers, b'diavad, it's okay. Something like that. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna talk about it a little bit. Just giving you a little bit.
But benching is for just the fingers, yeah. And then when we wash for
I'm sorry. What was it again?
when we bench, we just use the fingers.
Oh, good. Okay. Oh, now you got me into that now. Okay. Well, that's good. So yeah. So when we do my machronim, right? You're talking about my machronim, right? So there,
Yeah.
yeah. So my machronim, we don't even wash the whole finger. We don't even do that much. Just like the half of the finger is enough. Something like that, right? So why is it, by the way, that we don't need so much water from my machronim? What's the catch over there? What's the trick? So the thing is like this, that the reason we use my machronim before we bench, before we say Birkat Hamazon, is because we want to remove the grind from the hands, after you eat. That's the whole point, right? And they say also, there's that like sodomite salt, right? Melach sedomit. But today we don't have that. We don't have that stuff. They may have it in Israel if you go, because the cities of Sodom and Amorah are in that area, right? Whatever, by the Dead Sea, right? But the truth is, we don't have sodomite salt, and our salt, so we're not really worried about that so much. But we are worried about the grime on the hand. So the grime usually gets on like the fingertips. You know what I mean? So that's why you don't need to wash the whole hand because in my machronim. There's also another thing. They say that. So why can't you use a little bit extra? What does it hurt you? So the answer is that they say that water becomes impure. So we don't want to increase impurity, and that's why we don't wash the whole hand. My machronim. Even if you have lots of water, we don't want to do that because you're increasing the impurity. So therefore, they say we tell you, just wash like the tips of your fingers, like halfway down, something like that. That's good enough already. Okay, we're gonna get into that. Visit Hashem, right? We're gonna get into that. I'm just giving you a little bit sample of that right now, but we'll get into all the details. So anyway, right here, telling you right, you only have to wash until the perek, right? So according to the context here, since he's telling you to use only a little bit of water, right? I'm kind of assuming that he's talking about the joint of the fingers, because otherwise, right, you would need a lot of water to wash the whole hand, and this amount would not be enough. Okay, whatever, just pointing that out. We're going to look into a little bit more. We're just getting a sample over here. We're just getting a taste of it over here. Okay, so anyway, right, מפרשינן כולם מתניתין בנוטלין בבת אחד. So if we're going to explain the Mishnah, it says that we're washing, with one shot, everybody's hands in one shot. Nichas, then it comes out okay, he says, tefei, but it's better, it comes out better. Why? אבל מפרשינן בפרק כל הבשר, טעמה משום דעתו משרת טהרה. Right, that since we're right explaining in this parak, right, is because they come from, right, in other words, the original amount was enough when they first started. Mashma ben notlin zeh achar zeh. So that implies more that we're talking about one after the other. So yeah, so it's basically like going through a discussion over here, right? Who was this? Rabbi, this was in the name of the Rashba, Orchot HaChaim. Oh, all right. No, I'm sorry. That was no. So that was the first. We're talking about Rabbeinu Shimshon. That's who it was, right? This was Rabbeinu Shimshon. Okay, whatever. Anyway. But what about Rabbeinu Yonah? Piresh he explains Perak Elu Devarim. This parak he explains over there. Mem Bet Amud Aleph. That which we said, right, in the parak this in Chulin, Ashura lo kafdidan. They were not really so particular about the size. It's not in Revi'it Notrini Yadayim, as we said, right, that we can use the Revi'it, for two people. Doesn't mean he says that we're not particular, that it shouldn't be less than a Revit. That's impossible. He says, well, you cannot use less than that. You need a full Revit, he says, right? Without that, you're no good. Like we said in a different place, he says, and we said you need a half a Revit to purify the hands, and the rest of it is to purify the water, right, which is on the hands. Rather, he says like this: if you're not going to have an utensil or in the vessel, right, originally that size, right, the ve'it, since he now completes the the size afterwards, we're not concerned, he says. Because we learned the Merevit Noctrina because we can learn that we can wash the hands with Revit. Afilu l'shnei bnei adamim for two people. כשנוטרין האחד נמצא שלא יישאר לשני. So he says, and when he wash, when one washes the first guy, there's not enough for the second guy, right? But as we said, right, we go according to the beginning. There's only half a revit there. He says, even though it was possible that they would be watching afterwards with the half revit, nevertheless comes out that we're not really particular. That there should be originally, right, in the vessel, full size, full measure. Okay. But he says since the vessel holds revi'it, even though it didn't have enough in there originally, we're not particular, he says. Since afterwards it's going to complete it. And we push that out, right? In other words, this is not the halacha. But lohi, right? Not so. Not so. Don't buy that. Right? Because over there we're talking about originally there wasn't enough water there. So you can't learn from that we don't require the full measure originally, right, at the outset. So it says over there, because of this, they said that's allowed. Because when the second guy washes, even though it only had half a measure, right? But it came from a full measure, right? Originally, at the outset. And it was measured. So he says, therefore, mutar, it's allowed, therefore it's okay. Since he fills it up afterwards. With another half size. Even if that fulfillment doesn't come from remnant of the remainder of the water. אבל כשלא היה בו מתחילה, but it's as if there wasn't in the original size there, רביעית שיעור אחד, אינו נוטל ממנה ידיים. You cannot wash your hands with that. אף על פי שמשלים נטילה וחצי שיעור אחר. Even though he's going to fill it up later on. אין נטילה כלום. That's not going to work for you. Okay, so who said this? This was the
Rabbi Yonah, wasn't it?
right, Rabbi Yonah, yes. So, okay, fine. So that's that. Let's go on. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, good. So Rambam, so he says, you should know, says Bet Yosef, according to Rambam, right, also, you cannot do less than a vit, right? In other words, this is a universal thing, right? You cannot start with less than a vit, right? It's a non-starter, basically, right? Even though originally there was enough, before, right? When some other guy washed beforehand, right? But says that we're going to explain. Because he explains that when you have revit, you can wash the hands for one or two people, or one or two people. When you have half a lug, which is double the amount, for three people, or shlosha, or four people, right? Etc., etc., etc. Like we said, so Rambam tells you now, right? Listen, let me tell you, right, these measures, with how they're calculated, right? Right, all the conversions here. He's giving you the conversions. Here we go, right? So he says a lug dalad reviot, right? One lug, how many reviot does it have? 4, right? So what does that mean? A lug is 12 ounces, right? Like your like your cola bottle, right? Your cola can, whatever, right? That's a lug. So he says this washing, they allowed you to do less than a vit, for each one, right? As we said, if you start at least with the right amount. So that's already secondary water. But it says the first water, shouldn't be less than a vit, as I said, right? When you start, you gotta have revit. For each one. So it says, why were they more lenient with the second water, right? So you know what? I guess when he's using this language of second water, he's probably talking about the mayim achronim, after the meal. We'll see, right? We'll see. I think that's what he's talking about. So we just touched on that, right? A couple of minutes ago, we said that they use less water for that. So he says, why were they lenient with that? That's the question. So he says, "Ve'otam roim mepachot merevit lefi she'arei kvar nitaru b'mayim rishonim." So it's because you already, the first water, like it already purified you. Ve'hu amram b'sibat zeh shani hatam deka atum mishire tara. Right. So no, I think that he's not talking about mayim achronim here, right? The first understanding was better, right? That we're talking about the second pouring, right? Pouring number 1, pouring number 2. That's what we're talking about. So it's telling you, right, the first pour, there should be revit in there. But the second pour doesn't need revit, right? Which is already what we learned before as well. So, okay. ואיננו צריכים אלא מה שימשך כל היד בלבד. So it says, we only need something which can cover the hand, that's it. ובהקדמת המסכתא ההיא כתב שנטילת ידיים צריך שיהיה רביעית או יותר. Right, it says in the so it says in the introduction to this tractate, right, Yadayim, right, there the Rambam says you need revit or more, right, to wash your hands, lechol echad for each person. So he says that this is talking about when the hands are going to be, right, impure, to pour water on them, to purify them. So it's not going to be less than a beat. Like exactly explained. Then, but if his hands are very pure, so you can use another water, then you can eat truma. So he said, because the water that he used to wash his hands, the became impure. With his hands, it became they became now the first degree. Like we explained, therefore he says they need to be washed afterwards with a different water, right? That's the second pouring. In order they should now, right, become purify from the impurity of that water. So, right, just to recap that, right, what is he saying here? Important to understand this, by the way, that, as we said, right, the Ashkenazim, they wash their hands twice, even though you saw some people doing 3 times. But the truth is, the real Ashkenazi custom is like twice, like in other words, the original custom, whatever, it's all good, it's all good. But anyway, right, that's what it says in their books, twice. So what's the reason why you need twice? One is to purify, as we said, right, to purify your hand. The second one is coming to purify the water on your hand, because the first one became impure, the first water, the first pouring. So then why do Sephardim do 3 times? Because we said, right, because we're concerned maybe your hands were dirty, so the first pouring is coming just to clean your hands, and then the purification process starts after that. It's all good. Anyway, so let's go on. ועל צריכים מחיצה אחר כך במים אחרים, כדי שיתר מטומאת הים. כיוון שנטמעו מחמת ידיו, והמים האלו, so he says, this water, אשר רחץ בהם ידיו תחילה נקראים מים ראשונים. Right, so that first pouring, he says, is called מים ראשונים, the first water, right? So whatever, right? Catchy name, not catchy. Okay. So, והמים אשר ירחץ בהם אחר כך נקראו מים שניים, right? So then the second pouring is called Maim Shneim, right? נראה מדבריו, אלה דלפת חולין, אין צריך מים שניים. Right, so look what he says, right? Interesting. Now, Bet Yosef makes a duke here on the words of the Rambam, right? A deduction. Nice duke he makes over here, which is what? He's telling you, right, that since the Rambam here is talking about eating truma, which requires a high level of purity, right? Much more than mundane foods. So he's telling you, right, implies from the Rambam that if you're eating mundane foods, even 1 pouring would be enough, right? And that's exactly what we said, right? According to halakha, you really need only 1, The rest of it is just icing on the cake, Sort of astringency, sort of a, right, saintliness, whatever, whatever you want to call it. So in other words, what I'm telling you is that if a person has, limited water, right, 1 pouring is enough. He doesn't have enough water to wash twice or 3 times. So, okay, fine. Anyway, right, right, so he says you only need twice really for truma, but for mundane foods the once is enough according to the Rambam. Right, שיערו כדי שהם משכו ידיים בלבד ואף על פי שאין בהם רביעית. וזוהי ששנינו מרביעית נותנים ידיים לאחר אף לשניים. Right, so this is exactly what it says in the Talmud, says Bet Yosef, right? That what? That really, once is enough because it's telling you, right, that you can use, one eat for two people, right? So that's not really giving you many options over there. You'll be lucky if you get one pouring, for each person. Okay. So he says, well, Tamei Azil b'chibro gedolo. So he says also in his other book, right, the Mishneh Torah, right, his main book, his big work, right, the big work, right. He says the same. He goes according to the same logic there, right. Shepek ba b'nchot berachot, because the laws of blessings, b'inyan netilat yadayim lechulin lo uzkir mayim shniyim. Look what he says, right. When it comes to washing your hands from mundane foods like we eat, the Rambam didn't say to wash twice. He says once is enough. Right. That's exactly what we said. The truth is, right, bare bones halacha, once is enough. Boom. Okay. פרק י"ב בהלכות מקוואות כתב שנוטל שתי ידיו מתרומה צריך לחזור ולטול פעם בשנייה, right? When it comes to truma, he always says, the Rambam, gotta do it twice, 2 times. Different story altogether. במים שניים, כדי שיסיר המים שעל גבי ידיו, שהיה המים שנטל בהם תחילה, והם נקראים מים ראשונים, נטמעו בידיו, ולפיכך אם נפל כיכר של תרומה, לתוך המים שנטל בהם ידיו, תחילה נטמע, ואף נפל לתוך המים שניים, לא נטמע. Look what it says, right? So this is a problem, right? That's why we need for truma 2 washings. Why is that? Because if the truma touches the water, the food, right, touches the water, which is on your hands from the first pouring, it'll render the truma impure. That's why we can't tolerate that, right? We need to, so therefore he's got to wash twice for truma. Okay, good. Let's see how much we got left here. Okay, I guess, I don't know, if you guys have time, we'll continue a little bit. So it says, we may even finish if we're lucky, if we get lucky. No promises. So, again, right, it says a bit Yosef. You see that from the Rambam, you only need 2 pourings for truma, not for regular food. Right? The Katav Od Sham says further there, he writes, Shiur HaMayim shenotin b'hem techila revit. So he says again, right? How much do you need? You need revit lechol adam for each person, v'adam l'shtei yadayim for 2 hands, and pachot mishur ze. You can't do less than that. Kemo shebianu b'tinat yadayim. The pot, just like we explained regarding washing your hands for bread, aval mayim shniyim yesh l'shnayim nitol yadehem milvit. So he says, but right, when it comes to the second pouring, there's enough for 2 people to do from revit. If you have double that, right, you can use 3-4 people. And when it comes to a lug, right, which is 12 ounces, you can bring up 100 people, right? Which is, as we said, it's an exaggeration, but whatever. Because he says second pouring is not to purify, but just to, right, remove the water. Harishonim, the first water. So in the 6th parak of Brachot, he says, "Katav notlim arba'a or chamisha ze betzad ze." It says that we can, right, 4 or 5 people can wash one next to the other. Or yad ze al gab ze, or one on top of the other. B'shtifat echad, in one washing. Uvivad shepu yadem, as long as their hands are, right, not closely tied together, right, closely bonded. Kadesh yavu b'neim mayim. It says therefore the water can get in, right. By the way, I guarantee you guys, right, if you try to do this, like what we're describing over here, You're gonna find it difficult because we're not used to doing this kind of stuff. This is like like water acrobatics. Like it's a water circus. Like you have to be like a sort of a trapeze artist. To get this done. Not really so practical. This stuff, especially for us. Whatever. We're not used to this kind of thing. We're not so thrifty like this, with the water. That's not the way we work. Okay, whatever. So, so you see from there, right, that the Rambam holds, whether it's for Truma or whether it's for mundane foods, you do require Revi'it, right? That's a universal thing, it doesn't matter. Less than that, doesn't go. Now what you said, we can do all for two people, Revi'it. You have to do secondary water for Truma. It was taught about that. It says because when it comes to the mundane food, you don't need really a second pouring at all. And the reason is because we learned in the Mishnah Perek Bet Masechet Yadayim nafal kikar shel truma lishonim tameh ve'im etal l'chulin nami tzarich mayim mishniyim ama inakat nafal kikar shel truma filu shel chulin nami. Right. So it says that you see from the language of this Mishnah, which is talking about truma, when if it's not truma, you don't require a second pouring. Again, right? Reiterating the same thing. Rabbeinu Yerucham says this, Rabbi, right? Okay, I guess maybe we'll stop here, and we'll continue B'ezras Hashem tomorrow, and we'll wrap up this perek, right? This chapter B'nei Neder tomorrow, B'nei Neder. So thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch. We'll see you tomorrow, B'ezras Hashem. And what can I tell you? We have miracles and wonders going on in the Holy Land. So keep on praying. Keep your spirits up.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My daughter just called me, today from Israel. So she tells me, says, Abba, says, I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to call you before Rosh Hashanah. Says, I promised you I would call you to bless you for the Rosh Hashanah, So he says, you know why I didn't call? I says, well, I wasn't really angry at you, you didn't call me. I forgive you. So she says, you know why I didn't call you, Abba? Says, because he says, that the day before Rosh Hashanah, right, which was Wednesday, right, when they were shopping, says we went to the supermarket and there was a bomb, right, drill, right, because of the Iranian attack. You know what I mean? So he says we had to be in a shelter for an hour, like as we were shopping for Rosh Hashanah in the supermarket, So we had to go into the shelter and stay there for an hour. And he says that's why I wasn't able to call you to wish you happy Rosh Hashanah, Shana Tova. Can you imagine? And then she tells me, says, when he says that when the sirens went off, so we went back to shopping, as we finished the shopping afterwards. I was like, okay, well, looks like you had a nice time there. So that's what's going on in Israel, first-hand information, right? I can't tell you.
I hope she's safe.
As you shop in the supermarket, you're getting a bomb drill, right? And gotta go into the shelter. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. Laila Tov. All the best.
Thank you so much.
All the best.